So my name is Stuart Weiler. I'm the director for CAD and PLM at Elite Engineering, part of the Elite Aerospace group. Today we'll be talking about Creo Unite and flexible modeling. So you see here it's listed as FMX. That's the flexible modeling extension for Creo. So before we get into that, just a very quick intro about Elite. So the Elite Aerospace Group is a company with a couple different divisions. I'm in the engineering services portion, and in the engineering services portion, we are a partner of PTCs. That means that we resell their software and provide services. So when it comes to Creo, as you're seeing today, we like to give demonstrations and show people how it works, what it can do, and support your usage of it. Of course, we do lots of things with all of the other tools. You can see them listed down here at the bottom: MathCAD, ThingWorks, Windchill, Creo, Vuforia. So there's quite a toolkit in here. Since today we'll be focusing on Creo, we'll mostly be talking about CAD. And as a company, Elite also has factories where we have engineers doing design work. We manage that data in our PLM system, and then we manufacture. And that's what you see in the background here. This is a picture from our factory. So you can see that the things that we design, whether it's in Creo or other CAD tools, do indeed get turned into parts. You see the chips flying and the machine is making metallic parts to give us some very interesting final products. So without much further ado, I'd like to pass the presentation over to my colleague Paul Dye from PTC, who's going to be showing us how Creo is very easy to use regardless of the CAD tool that your design might have started in. Using the Creo Unite technology allows you to view data from any other CAD tool, and then using the flexible modeling, take it forward, continue that design in Creo.
All right, thank you very much, Stuart. Let me go ahead and share up my screen here. All right, and can you confirm you can see that, Stuart?
Looks good.
All right, awesome. So thank you everybody for attending here today, and thank you, Stuart, for having me. Again, my name is Paul Dye. I'm an application engineer here with PTC, and Stuart asked me to come on today to talk a little bit about some of the tools that we have really focused towards collaboration, and that could be internal with your teams right here, or it could be with other people, suppliers, vendors, that sort of thing. But there's a lot of things that go into it. So that's really what we're going to go over, is how that focuses in on what we do here in Creo. As a brief agenda, first we're going to go over some of the different challenges that we've seen out in the industry, or even some of the ones you might be seeing in your systems today currently, around collaborating along, working with non-native geometry, that sort of thing. I'm going to go over our solutions that we have to those challenges with Unite technology and flexible modeling. I'm going to go through some of the capabilities of both of them, see a brief demonstration, see what it looks like in the context of Creo, and then finish up by talking about some of the real value that it can provide throughout that process. So the first thing that we've seen as a challenge is really being able to collaborate effectively, specifically when it comes to working with others that are operating with a different CAD system. A lot of times it's tough to share data. It's even tougher to make any changes or edit things down the road. That's not even mentioning the challenges that go along with managing all of that data or having updates. Those are things that can really be a struggle throughout that process. And whether it's internal or external, we need to be able to work with disparate tools and data. We need to do it in a way that's quick, in a way that's accurate. And many times what we've seen is that companies will have many different CAD systems at the same time, which around that can start to get very expensive. And not only expensive, it can be very difficult to incorporate and effectively work with all those different types of CAD data. And what we've seen is this kind of leads out in the industry is products start to get very expensive, or even worse, get very delayed. You might spend a month trying to even just get the right file from an outside vendor, and that's time that you really just can't get back. When you're trying to get things out the door a lot faster, that could be a big roadblock and something that we definitely need to be able to address. So what we did is take a look at all those different challenges, and within Creo, provide purpose-built tools for being able to combat those challenges. Those being, like we see here, with Unite technology and with flexible modeling, or FMX as I might refer to it. And I'm going to go over both of these tools, but first I'm going to start here with our Unite technology. And this, first and foremost, allows you to consolidate data from other CAD systems, but also collaborate whenever you're beginning to work with another format fairly often. So just looking at some of the capabilities of Unite technology, we first, of course, have the ability to do a file import. This is something that we've had as part of Creo for a while now, but we've done a lot to improve the functionality and really make it very straightforward, where we're able to convert that non-PTC data into Creo objects with essentially just one click. So that works whether it's native geometry from another system or even non-native geometry, things like neutral file formats, IGES, step files. Basically bring that in and convert it into Creo objects. And then on the other side of things, we can do also a file import for things like SolidWorks data, CATIA, NX, Inventor. What that allows you to do is bring it into Creo to whatever its native format is, but you have it right in the assembly. It still remains in that native format. And you can have it in the bill of materials. So you're not converting it to Creo files necessarily, but you can still do all of your normal work around it in context with that model. And so these are things that come right out of the box with Creo Parametric, things that we've had for a while and really have improved a lot of the features and functionality around that. And moving on from here, the next capability that we like to utilize a lot is the Save As feature. So if you're collaborating with an outside vendor that needs your data but needs it in a different file format, we can do Save As into many different file types that you can share out with other people. And going back to the file open capability where you have the models residing in their native format, you also have the ability to automatically detect and update when the model is out of date. So say you have a supplier that sends you a new version of the model, well, you can detect that and update that right within the model or the assembly that you're working with. And that actually works even if you've already converted and made changes to the model. What you can do is actually update the original file and you don't have to redo all the changes that you made to that geometry. Creo is actually really the only CAD software that has that capability to make those edits or have those things update even after you've made changes to the geometry that we brought in. What that really allows us to do is collaborate and consolidate with any CAD data from right within Creo. Right? So these two features that we see here, the Save As and the automatic update, are parts of specific collaboration extensions within Creo. And you can decide exactly which systems you want to work with frequently or which ones you already do work with frequently, and then only work with those specific extensions. And actually, a few of them, like the SolidWorks and the Inventor, are part of our base packaging with Creo. So it's not even something that's an additional add-on. That's something that you get with just the Design Essentials package with Creo. And that's actually the same thing with flexible modeling. This is something else that comes just with standard Creo. And this is what we're really taking that geometry once we have it in Creo and being able to make use of it. So this really the focus of it is being able to make quick changes regardless of the past. It doesn't matter how the part or the model was created, whether it came from a different CAD system, or even at the end of the day, what it's tied to. So if you need to make late stage changes, you need to move something around, simply just do that with the flexible modeling tool, or I might refer to it as FMX very often. So right off the bat, it's very easy to use. It's built right into Creo, uses the same exact user interface that you're already used to. And on top of that, it works seamlessly in with our standard parametric design capabilities as well. So you can use them both at the same time. And what we're really allowing you to do is quickly select geometry, but at the same time, do it in a very intelligent manner. So you're not just grabbing a face or a surface or an arc, you're grabbing a boss or a cut, and really having all the different adjacent geometry that's tied to it update for whatever changes that you're making from there. And again, this will probably make more sense as I go through and show what that looks like in the context of Creo. And in that process that we're going to go through, we're essentially taking pieces of the model and we're recognizing first the geometry. And once we have those features recognized, we're able to change them, move them around, modify different parameters. And all of that's really done regardless of how the model was built out initially. We don't require any of that information to start. And that's the next step is once you have you're modeled in, you have things recognized, we have Oh, can you hear me, Stuart? I'm not sure. I think I may have gone on mute for a second.
That's better. Now we do, yeah. And
Okay.
Yep, now we're starting to see your screen as well. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Not sure what that was. Must have been just something with the WebEx meeting. But yeah, just going forward from there, it's really the process we're going to go through is first recognizing geometry and then being able to make different modeling changes to the geometry that you have. So, go through, rotate things around, move things, whatever needs to happen. And at the same time, have the model update for any of those changes. And we actually still get to see all the different features that we've worked with. They go through and populate over in the model tree as well. And then once you go through and work with these different features, there's actually options for propagation of each of those. And all that can happen on any type of model. It could be a Creo model, but just as easily be imported step by just could be from a different CAD system. Still get our job done right here within Creo. All right, so that's the general overview over both of the tools. What I'd like to do now is show a little bit about how they work. So I'm going to start with just a little bit of Unite technology, but really the main focus of this demonstration is going to be on some of the real changes that we can make once we have that CAD geometry in Creo with the flexible modeling capabilities. We'll go ahead and switch over to that now. All right, so here we have our part that we're going to be working with here. This is going to be on a couple different parts throughout this, but the first part that we have is a brake disc that we've imported from SolidWorks. And actually, in this case, we've left it in its native format to begin. So that's going to be something that may have been from a larger assembly that we're working on. And now only at this point do we actually need to go through and make changes. And the issue right now, starting in its current state, is it doesn't have any features associated to it. So what can we really do with that? Well, to start, I can select on geometry and recognize it as a cut. And from there, we're then able to make changes to that geometry. You can see once we go through and start to make a change, it mentions that it really confirms that we're going to begin to make changes. And now only at this point do we then do a conversion. So actually to this point, it's actually just residing in its native SolidWorks format. And now we can go through and make changes. And still, at any point later, if there was updates to the initial file that you began with, you would still be able to make those changes or have those things automatically update to the initial file. But from here, we're going to go through and make some changes right within the CAD and Creo environment, even though we have no features that we're beginning with. So here, what we can see is I can move that feature up with a dragger. I can quickly resize it, make it tilt, add a bevel. It's really very quick to make those changes. So rather than us having to delete a bunch of stuff and then try to recreate it, we just simply tell the system to move it. And then that moves that you kind of going through and we're using there can be sort of freehand with a dragger, or you can specify an exact distance that you'd like it to move as well. So from one edge to the next, we can give that a specific value if we'd like to. So again, really parameterizing the things that I care about on this model. And again, the rest of the model is just imported geometry. We don't have to go through and make any edits there. But now this is a feature. It's something that I can work with, go back in, make changes if I'd like to, still making use of that existing geometry. That's looking pretty good. Let's go a little bit further here with some of the cuts that we have. We can even see if I just pick a piece of that cut out, I can first recognize that as a cut, but I can also recognize that here's a pattern, right? So once you recognize that as a pattern, you can then change that pattern accordingly. So that's a change that normally would have taken a lot longer to model that out on imported geometry. Now it's really fast. And if I want to change just the size of one of those holes, that's also no problem. Or if we'd like to, we could have that change propagated downline to the other ones as well. And then once you have that propagated to the different holes, we can go ahead and regenerate to see what we got here. All right, that's looking pretty good. And also with that, all the changes that we make are then populated over in the model tree on the left, so you can still work with those. But from now, let's go ahead and move forward to some of the cuts we have on the outside. The first step is, again, selecting on some of the different surfaces, recognizing those cuts. And then once you have all those cuts recognized, we're then able to do something with it going forward. Similar to how we had before, we can first recognize those cuts that they're being patterned around the model. And remember, again, there wasn't a pattern feature in that imported model. It's essentially just a featureless blob of data. But flexible modeling, or FMX, is able to recognize that pattern. And then we can make our changes, increase the number of instances like we see here. Even if we'd like to, say, increase the override diameter, well, we just grab the outside of the model, say, all right, I'm going to go ahead and increase that by a certain amount. And in turn, adjust all the other features that are tied to that outside diameter. And if there's even anything that we don't want, so say we have this cut here, well, we just recognize it, and we say we want to go ahead and remove that. Basically just cuts or adds material as if nothing was there. So you can see, again, very quick, very easy to use that non-native imported CAD geometry, specifically in that case from SolidWorks. But it could be also neutral file formats. So like this one here, this could be step by just whatever it might be, such as just a bunch of different arcs, lines, geometry. But from here, we're able to utilize all that in a meaningful way. So up here at the top, we're going to go ahead and work with some of the support ribs that we have. Now, again, the first thing that I'll do is recognize that the ribs are bosses. And then once I have those recognized, then we can move them around. So in this case here, what I'm going to do is specify a certain center axis to move from. And that's because I want to rotate those features around that hole to the rest of the model. So we can see essentially really position that dragger tool to a lot of different uses, whether it's moving, rotating, or even if we'd like to do this here, maybe we want to move them to the outside, but at the same time keep those original bosses, we can do that too. All right, so just like that, took the bosses, extended out their use, and with that, still rebuilt all the different rounds and adjacent geometry with that. And moving down to some of these cutout letters, maybe now this model is outdated, now I want to remove those. Again, just window over them, recognize them as cuts, click to remove. It's really that fast to work with things like that. And the next thing that I have here is something that we have with our geometry search tool. And what I can do is take a surface and then search throughout the model to find any other instances of those specific geometries throughout the model. And then we can recognize all of those as chamfers. Once they're recognized, we can go through and edit all of their dimensions. And the system changes all the surfaces that have the same size, have the same shape. So that's really powerful, being able to not only recognize the features ourselves, but have the system find those for you, especially once your models get a little bit more complex and get higher in number throughout that. All right, next feature here. Maybe now we want to work on this extrude down here at the bottom. We can recognize a symmetry constraint. And we notice that the top and bottom are the same, and we want those changes to reflect on either side. So let's go ahead and start here on the bottom. And that's just going to begin by selecting some of the surfaces that we want to work with. In this case here, we have the top, the bottom, and the outside. And then we can have some changes. In this case here, we can go ahead and offset those. We can expand them out a bit. And once we do that, again, all the adjacent geometry, the rounds update. And from there, we can actually still control exactly how that updates. You can have things be a constant radius if you'd like to, or maybe change that depending on the edge. Either way, just as fast to define that. Again, this isn't geometry or features that we started with. This is things that we're doing all to this imported geometry in this case. And again, we want it to be symmetric. So once we go ahead and make any changes here, we can go have those propagated over to the other side as well. And that would have been a lot more difficult for us to try to do just using standard parametric techniques. Instead, we just use direct modeling with MMX to do that very quickly. And next part here on the other side, we can again look down here, recognize that bit as a boss, and then from this point, make a pattern out of it. And a lot of different options with the pattern type that you're using here. So this becomes now a feature that you can use, you can utilize going forward. So again, like I mentioned, really parameterizing the things that you want to utilize, and anything that you're not concerned with, just leave it as is. Don't make the system try to figure out what every single thing in the model is if you don't have to. And here then we can make a change just to one of these features if we'd like to. So say we wanted to go through and make one of them smaller, a bit smaller of a diameter in this case. We can change that just for one of them, or again, have that pattern to the rest of the model if you'd like to. So again, these are all changes we made in a very short amount of time, all using the standard flexible modeling on that imported data. That's looking pretty good. We have this propagated to the rest of our pins here. All right, so last thing that I want to look at here is just one more part. We'll go ahead and open that up here in our file explorer. And one thing to notice with this is that it's actually a Creo part. So a bit different from what we had before, where initially it was all imported geometry. Now with this, we have a bunch of features, and it's a pretty fleshed out design. So maybe at this point you think you wouldn't need FMX for working here. Well, say you wanted to get rid of a hole normally, right? You click to delete it. The problem is that the feature's tied in with other features and different geometry to that piece. So with that, if I wanted to go through and delete any of these, right, well, now all these other ones are going to fail and probably need some work with it. So that's definitely a concern. So normally I would need to go through here, redesign the model. Maybe this isn't even my design. Maybe I got it from someone else, someone sent it to me, and I need to work with it. Well, now with flexible modeling, all I need to do is recognize that feature as a cut and say, I want to remove that. And the cuts are now gone without affecting any of those other features within the model. And same thing with this piece down here. I know that, before whenever I wanted to make a change to this, it would have messed up all those other features that were tied to this hole. Now, all I do is say, I want to remove it, and it's gone. So it's very easy to work with. And same thing here, maybe we've got these mounting holes and I want to get rid of them, but I want to go through and have the system find all of those for me. Well, again, I can use our geometry rules, go through and find that particular feature geometry that has the same radius, and the system goes through and finds all of it for us, and we can just remove it. And same thing down here at the bottom, we can go ahead and take some of these surfaces that we have. In this case, we're going to have the system look for anything that's coaxial with that piece or has an equal radius. And let me recreate that adjacent geometry at the same time still. Allows you to make very quick edits without needing to redefine everything again from the start. Very quick to work with. And one thing that I also want to look at here is a couple features that we have on the right-hand side of the model. So this is, again, something that was laid out parametrically with a sketch, different dimensions all laid out. But with these, again, we can still maintain all of that design intent, and it's still very extremely easy to move things around. So we just use some of the adjacent geometry, different curves as a dragger tool if we'd like to. So I can move them a little bit towards the middle here, or if we'd like to, type in a specific distance. Whatever we need to do in that case. So again, now I've moved those around, but what happened to the original sketch? Well, those are still right there. I haven't deleted any of that underlying intent that went with those. But what that allows me then to do is go back, change the cut hole diameters if I'd like to. Maybe if I make them a little bit bigger. You can see that we still have that move command happen after those changes, but it still maintains that design geometry. So that's what we could see is whether you're working with Creo data or imported non-native CAD data, we're able to use that flexible modeling. Makes it a lot faster, much easier. Even once we get pretty far along with the design, we can still make those two features and changes without breaking everything that came before it. All right, so that's been a demonstration of what we can utilize with some of the things like unique technology, really a lot of the changes we can make with flexible modeling. And overall, what this does is really give us a lot of benefit and at the end of the day, a lot of value that it provides. So I'd say in general, these tools are all about establishing enhanced collaboration. We can use all the different functionality from open to import to save as, update features, really start to take in any non-PTC data and work with it however you need to from there. And on top of that, have the ability to use tools like flexible modeling to make direct edits to any of that 3D CAD data. It really allows you to collaborate with anyone going forward. And then the other side of it is the ability to consolidate multi-CAD data. So we don't have to purchase and manage all these different systems just to work with all that data. So let's give you the ability to work with it all right within Creo. And that's really the main idea here, is really start to incorporate any data, Creo or not, and do what you need to do with it. Leave it in its native format, make direct modeling edits, and do all that through the use of the tools that we have here in Creo that at the end of the day help you to create better designs working with that geometry. And with that, that's been our demonstration of some of the different collaboration tools we have in Creo. So what I'd like to do now is pause, take any questions that we might have, or pass it back over now to you, Stuart, to wrap up.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, we'll give everyone just a moment. If there are any questions, you can either put them in the chat session or you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask. But while we wait for people, I just want to add on top of what Paul mentioned is that this is a tool you should already have. It is actually already included as part of the design essentials. So Creo Unite, which allows you to open from other CAD tools, as well as flexible modeling, which allows you to recognize features and model based off features as opposed to individual operations, is already included. So this should be something that you hopefully are taking advantage of.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. And especially even the collaboration tools with SolidWorks and Inventor are included right out of the box. There are a couple of the collaboration extension tools like the CATIA and the NX tools that do require specific additional extensions depending on what you might have in terms of packaging. But those kind of work on a la carte. It's really only getting what you need. If you're only working with NX data, you can just work with that specific collaboration extension.
Excellent point. Well, I'm not seeing any questions, so we'll give everyone just another moment. But if there aren't any, just want to say thanks everyone for joining. I think this was very helpful. And I always think flexible modeling is a fantastic tool. Whether you're starting from another CAD tool or from Creo, as Paul showed you, you can recognize features and remove it or just pattern it, and by recognizing them, continue forward. So it's certainly a very valuable way to do your modeling in a more efficient manner. And of course, if you do have other CAD tools or legacy tools, how you can consolidate on Creo and use it as your one tool going forward. So I guess with that, since there aren't any questions, we'll just say thank you to Paul for the presentation, and thanks everyone for joining. I will, as always, send out some for further webinars for the future. So looking forward to seeing everyone then.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one.
Hi, everyone.